Throughout the years, we've seen some really great antagonists in the world of fiction. From Darth Vader to Voss to Vicious. I didn't intend for all of them to start with V's, but whatever. All of them have brought something to the table that has made them legendary, and I think the most important factor to that is believability. Villains can single-handedly determine whether a piece of art is good or bad. It's them who propel the story to move forward and give meaning to the main hero's actions. Although their existence isn't necessary for telling a story, I'm sure if you look back on some of your favorite manga, anime, movies, video games, etc., you'll find tons of titles where the quote-unquote bad guys shine brighter than the actual protagonists. As I've mentioned before, we've seen a lot of these memorable antagonists. However, Nishiki and Anakin in particular stuck out to me as their stories are pretty similar to each other. They've been fighting for survival since they were children, but had brothers who helped them fight along the path, and this brotherly oath ultimately led to their downfall. However, there's a pretty big difference between them, and that is one manages to tell an extremely touching and engaging story, while one tries to do so and fails. Before we move on to the actual meat of the video, please be warned that it contains spoilers for Yakuza 0, Kiwami, and the Star Wars prequels, so if you haven't experienced those, I highly recommend you check them out. Maybe not so much the Star Wars ones, but whatever. And if not, buckle up, it's gonna be a long one. When you start Yakuza 0, the first friendly face you meet in the game is Nishikiyama or Nishiki. He's slick and fashionable, quite unlike Kiryu, and acts as a guide in the beginning of the game to show you around Kamurocho with its entertaining activities. With only a few lines of dialogue or even the way he behaves, the player gains a good understanding of his character, even though he doesn't play a huge role in the overall story. Nishiki is a person whose actions come from love, and it's this very love which leads to his demise. Loyalty, affection, and love are the very things that drive Nishiki, and he's willing to sacrifice his own life for his loved ones. The second episode of Star Wars tries to portray the same kind of characterization and fails miserably. At first glance, Anakin Skywalker, one of the main characters from the Star Wars prequels, has tons of similarities with Nishiki. They both act on their feelings, and love for their dearest people is their main motive for fighting, but you'll quickly realize that you shouldn't take these at face value. For instance, Anakin has trained under Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it's because of Obi-Wan that he's able to protect people as a Jedi. Although equal time has been granted to each of them individually in the movies, you rarely see them having any meaningful interactions with each other, while the exact opposite happens in Yakuza. The game uses the very little time Kiryu and Nishiki spend with each other to do some amazing character development, while in Star Wars, Anakin's relationship with Obi-Wan isn't explored at all, or with his supposedly love Padme downright doesn't make any sense. Aside from their physical features, Anakin and Padme have no reason to fall in love because they've seen each other very little throughout the movies. And I get it, it doesn't have to necessarily make sense, love at first sight sort of thing, but even then the movies don't use this love relationship in a meaningful way or conclude it in the 6 or 7 hour runtime. That's why the movie's obsession and showing these two as a couple isn't sensible at all, and at the end hurts Anakin as a believable character. All of this because Mr. George Lucas either didn't have the time to work on the script or simply didn't care, as the whole love relationship is just to justify showing 5 minutes of Darth Vader at the end.
And for all the merchandise.
Yeah. If I had to pinpoint one reason that the prequels failed, and a lot of fans such as myself were disappointed upon watching it, it'll be that the movies constantly tell you how to feel, not preparing the scenes for you to feel different emotions. The genuine relationships between the characters from the original trilogy are gone, and are instead replaced with lifeless and robotic acting. Lack of interest and laziness of Mr. Lucas in creating believable characters has not only made one of the most lackluster films of fiction, but has also led the talents of many other people to waste. But it doesn't end here. After taking the blame for the murder of one of the biggest figures in the Tojo clan, Kazuma Kiryu is sentenced to 10 years in prison, and this is the very first time Nishiki is all alone. Kiryu was always the only person Nishiki could wholeheartedly depend on, and when he didn't have the guts to do something himself, Kiryu would always lend a helping hand, same with the murder of Daigo Dojima. With him gone, Nishiki forgets his true goals and becomes ever so fragile. He was bound to Kiryu. Without him, the person who he depended on so much was replaced with others who tried to take advantage of him one way or the other. Moreover, Nishiki was always pondering this question on whether his feelings for Kiryu were admiration or hatred, which in his absence turned to hatred. All the people around him added fuel to this flame that he was better than Kiryu, that he should triumph over his own sworn brother for power, which led him to being the main villain of the game. Between each chapter of Yakuza Kiwami, the player is shown flashbacks of Nishiki's life while Kiryu was in prison, and in one of these very flashbacks we can actually see Nishiki's transformation from the lovable sidekick we knew to the antagonist we spend all our time reaching. You see, shortly after Kiryu's imprisonment, Nishiki's sister is administered to the hospital, and he finds himself in the need of 30 million yen to save her life. It's at this moment where he's forced to seek help from one of the very same monsters who took advantage of him and complete his cycle of insanity. And this is the exact reason I'm so in love with Yakuza. We're witnessing the fall and eventually rise of a broken man, which we can do nothing about but watch it unfold. Kiwami's story is often hurtful and depressing, but our main characters never lose hope, and that's the very reason tons of people are in love with the series. Unfortunately, the same can't be said about Star Wars. Nishikiyama's transformation makes sense because he has faults within himself. That's why it becomes extremely difficult to implement that kind of writing on a character who's been trained and even mentioned in prophecies to be the best and is. Anakin has been trained in the Jedi arts, which has existed for more than 10,000 years and even under two of its most powerful masters at that, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. After all this time, surely the Jedi arts must have been perfected by the many masters throughout history, and they should be able to uncover their Padawan's weaknesses. No matter how many articles I read or videos I watch, I still can't believe that Anakin Skywalker, a trained Jedi, can easily kill his masters and even children just because of some dream and love. Anakin's character is awful in every imaginable way, not only because there was no coherent thought process behind it, but because none of his actions follow any sense of logic. In the prequels, stuff just happened without any explanation, and the story expects you to just accept them and move on to the next cool lightsaber fight. Even Anakin's relationship with Obi-Wan, which might be the biggest part of the trilogy, is severely neglected. Besides a few lines of dialogue which hint to the previous adventures of the two, we never see them have any meaningful interactions with each other. This might sound weird, but I'm sure if anyone begins Star Wars from the prequels, he won't feel a thing watching them because they're so empty of emotions. By the looks of it, all of the wacky, fun adventures of Anakin and Obi-Wan have happened in the novels, animations, comic books, etc., and only an empty shell has been left for us, which as a fan of this world, really breaks my heart. For a more thorough look at the prequels, I highly recommend watching the Mr. Plinkett series. His criticism of the movies are completely on point and he dives a lot deeper into them. We don't really have the time to do that here because the grand final battle still remains. We have finally reached the end of the line. There is a certain excitement present in the fight between Nishiki and Kiryu, which is severely missing in the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan. With Nishiki, this is the painful end to a story we've sunk hours of our time into. But with Anakin, we're just witnessing the movement of two lightsabers in front of a lifeless background. Mr. Lucas planned to hide the movie's shortcomings with animation and special effects, which here become awfully apparent. From the fight itself to the atrocious dialogues of Anakin, everything feels tacked on and robotic. I should probably mention that the level of CGI is amazing for this time, but no matter how good it is, if there's no story or characters to back it up, it's useless. It is said that when after many endeavors the koi fish reaches the end of the river and triumphs over the endless waterfall, he is ascended to a golden dragon as a gift from the gods. Neither Kiryu nor Nishiki want this fight, but the cruel hand of fate has placed them here. The dragon can't sacrifice his loved ones for the koi, and the koi can't back down from reaching the goal he so desperately desires. This fight is by far the most hurtful encounter I've experienced in Yakuza because Nishiki is someone we've spent quite a lot of time with. As funny as it sounds, we know his favorite bar, that he likes karaoke, loves to dress up sleek, treats his friends, especially Kiryu, with utmost compassion, and when the world was against him and his brother, he fought till the end. However, this doesn't mean that the koi gets defeated. Far from it, he reaches salvation. Nishiki was never satisfied with his life. His parents were killed by his foster father Kazama-san, his sister passed away in front of his eyes, and Yumi's death, coupled with making an enemy of Kiryu, finally broke him. In his last moments, Akira Nishikiyama decides to save someone for the first time in his life, his brother Kazuma Kiryu, by blowing up the 10 billion yen and Kyuhei Jingo, the prime reason for his suffering. The Golden Dragon rains down money on the people of Tokyo, and in the best way possible, concludes his evolution. By now, you've probably understood that I'm not too fond of the Star Wars prequels, and if you disagree with me, I can understand. The excitement of gathering with all your friends to watch a Star Wars movie had a sense of magic back then, which is now long gone, so I understand that it's not just about the movie, but the feelings and memories attached to it. That being said, it still doesn't change the fact that the prequels are lacking in pretty much every single area, and I wanted to compare the character structures with the game I wholeheartedly love, which does it immaculately. I wasn't trying to change your mind at all, I just wanted you to look at two pieces of art in totally different ways. Thanks for watching.